The bitter Moscow wind whistled through the gaps of the aging apartment windows. Galina Ivanovna sat by the stove, rubbing her hands, not just to ward off the cold, but to soothe the trembling that had long taken hold of her fingers. It wasn't the weather that ached her most. It was the silence. Her son, Dmitri, had not spoken a full sentence to her in days. Not since the night she forgot to buy the milk. That was all it took now. A small mistake, a missed item from the list. And the silence would stretch on like the winter outside. Their flat in Marfino used to be a sanctuary, a place where bedtime stories echoed against the walls and the scent of stewed cabbage made it feel like home. But now, everything had changed. Dmitri came home late again that evening. She heard the door slam, boots dragged across the floor, and the sound of the kettle flung onto the stove. "You're still sitting there?" His voice cut through the room like broken glass. Galina turned slowly, her voice soft. "I made your favorite soup. You haven't eaten today." "I didn't ask for soup," he muttered, dropping his bag on the floor. "You think this flat runs on soup?" She looked at him, his jaw clenched, the shadows under his eyes deeper than yesterday. There was no warmth left in his face, just the weight of resentment. "I've been thinking," he said, not meeting her eyes. "You're staying here for free. You don't pay rent. You don't do anything. It's time you contribute. Or go." Galina's breath caught in her throat. "Dima, this is our home." He turned sharply, stepping closer, eyes burning with frustration. "No. It's my home. I pay the bills. I work double shifts while you sit here watching the neighbors out the window." And then it happened. She hadn't expected it. Not from her boy. Not from the child she raised with lullabies and hand-stitched coats. A sharp, wet sound broke the air. He spat in her face. Silence followed, heavier than any words. Galina did not cry. She did not scream. She only wiped her cheek, rose from her chair, and walked into the hallway. She opened the closet where her coat hung since spring and pulled it off the hanger with trembling hands. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons. Dmitri stood frozen behind her. "You can't be serious," he said. But she did not answer. She picked up her woolen scarf, wrapped it slowly, tied it the way her mother taught her long ago, and stepped out into the snow-covered night. The door clicked shut behind her. The snow crunched beneath Galina's boots, muffling the echo of her own heartbeat. It had been years since she had stepped outside at night alone. Moscow had changed, yet somehow stayed the same. The street lamps still hummed quietly above the pavements, but the buildings loomed taller, colder, indifferent. She walked aimlessly at first, the chill numbing her thoughts. Where would she go? No friends nearby. Her sister had died 5 winters ago. The church shelter, maybe. If they still remembered her. As she turned onto a narrower street, her phone buzzed. She fumbled with her gloves and checked the screen. One message from Dmitri. Just one word. "Sorry." She did not reply. Not because she didn't care, but because there was no space left in her heart to hold disappointment and forgiveness at once. She reached the gate of the shelter. A small cross hung above the door, and a faint light flickered inside. She knocked. A young man opened, wrapped in a thick sweater and kindness in his eyes. "Do you have space for one more?" she asked. He nodded and stepped aside. Inside, the warmth made her eyes sting. The shelter was quiet. A few women sat huddled near a gas heater, sipping tea from mismatched cups. Galina sat down in a corner, her coat still on, unsure if this was truly a place to rest. An older woman approached her. Wrinkled face, bright scarf, heavy eyes. "You're new." Galina nodded. "Just tonight." "It starts with one night," the woman said. "Then it becomes a chapter." They spoke until the tea went cold. The woman's name was Irina, once a ballet teacher. Now just another soul looking for shelter. Irina told Galina about the rules, the routines, and the priest who came every morning. Galina listened, not fully there. Her mind wandered to the apartment window where her houseplants still stood, and whether Dmitri would water them. But slowly, stories began to fill the hollow spaces in her chest. Stories of other women who were also mothers, sisters, wives. Not broken. Just paused. Morning light filtered through the frosted glass. Galina hadn't really slept. The cot was stiff, the blanket thin, but it was the silence she missed the most. Not the silence of her apartment, but the one that spoke of safety. She stepped outside, the snow glistening like powdered glass. In the street, she watched people pass by with briefcases, hurried steps, warm coffee in hand, as if her world hadn't shattered the night before. She found herself walking again, past the bakery she and Dmitri used to visit, past the park where she once read him Pushkin beneath the birch trees. Every corner whispered memories. She stopped in front of a pharmacy window, her reflection staring back, eyes tired, hair escaping her scarf. She barely recognized herself. A young woman inside noticed her and came out. "Do you need anything, babushka?" Galina shook her head and walked away. She wasn't a grandmother. She wasn't anything now. Just a woman carrying a silence too heavy for words. Back at the shelter, Galina asked Irina for paper and a pen. That night, under the dim lamp in the corner, she began to write. Not to Dmitri. To herself. She wrote about the day he was born. How he looked at her with wide, accusing eyes, as if already aware the world would be unfair. She wrote about his first fever and how she stayed awake for 40 hours beside him. The small joys. The slow drifting apart. Her hands ached, but she didn't stop. The ink bled into the paper, like her grief had waited decades to come out. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the pocket of her coat. It was never meant to be read, only released. She slept better that night. 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, Galina was washing cups when Irina came running. "Someone's asking for you." A young man. At the gate. Galina's hands froze in the soapy water. She stepped outside. Dmitri stood there, eyes red, unshaven, holding a thermos in one hand and her old scarf in the other. "Mama," he said. "Just that." She didn't move. "I looked everywhere. I didn't think you'd actually leave." "You told me to," she replied quietly. He stepped forward. "Come home. Please. I cleaned the flat. I made your soup. The one with dill." Galina looked at him long. And then she said the most surprising thing. "Not yet." She turned and walked back inside. In the days that followed, Galina found rhythm. She swept the shelter floor every morning, helped the cook peel potatoes, sat with a shy young girl named Lena each evening, listening to her poems. For the first time in years, she felt herself breathe without bracing. Dmitri came again. Twice. Left food. Letters. One had a photo of them from years ago, her smiling, he in his school uniform. She didn't throw them away. But she didn't answer either. She needed to hear her own voice again before letting his fill the room. One morning, the priest who ran the shelter invited her to sit with him. They talked about simple things, weather, tea, books. Then he asked, "What is forgiveness to you, Galina?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said, "Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without bitterness." He nodded, as if that was enough. And maybe it was. Winter began to ease. The snow turned to slush. Birds returned to the trees. Galina stood outside her old apartment door. The hallway smelled the same, damp wool and old paint. She knocked. Dmitri opened it. He looked older, quieter. No words were spoken. She stepped inside. Everything had changed. And yet it hadn't. Her houseplants were alive. "I watered them," Dmitri said. She nodded. "I know." They shared tea in silence. Then soup. Dmitri didn't apologize again. Galina didn't ask for it. Instead, they talked about the past as if flipping through old books. Some pages torn. Others still blank. That night, Galina slept in her own bed. But it was not the same bed. She had changed. And now so had her home.